From the making of healing bombs to outright chemical warfare, no other job in Bravely Default can match the sheer creativity of its very own Salve Maker. Salve Maker is the go-to item user of Bravely Default, using consumable items to create interesting solutions to almost any problem that the game can throw at you, from potent healing effects, powerful elemental attacks, to even creating items that can simulate other jobs, spells, and abilities. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty that is the Salve Maker's combat abilities, let's take a moment to look at their specialty, healing lore. This specialty is quite simple. All healing actions, whether they are magical, abilities, or an item, will have their effectiveness doubled. This is a lifesaver for healers, as it allows them to dedicate less resources to healing the party for a similar result. Items such as potions and ethers see a huge boost from this, as their effects are static, meaning there is a clear boost in recovery when using them. And since the Salve Maker focuses on using consumables, this added healing bonus really helps out a lot. So, first up on the list of combat abilities for the Salve Maker is its iconic move, Compounding. By taking two items, whether they be restoratives or attack items, and combining them together, the Salve Maker can create an entirely new item with varying effects. The type of item you obtain is based on the two items you compounded, as each item has their own special effect tied to them. Pretty simple concept, yeah? Well, then let's move on to what kind of items you can make with this ability. Now, since there are over 70 different creations you can make with this ability, I'm only going to list some of the more useful ones to keep in mind. On screen now, you can see a series of salves, their effects, and the items needed to create them. Now, if some of the item names here don't ring a bell, trust me when I say we'll get to that later. Going down the list, we have Resurrect and Reincarnate. These two creations give the Salve Maker the means to improve upon a regular Phoenix down, increasing its recovery properties and healing KO'd allies for more HP and even some NP depending on which you choose. The Quarter Elixir combines ethers and potions to create a potent HP and MP recovery item, and paired with the Salve Maker's healing lore, it can create an easy sustain tool for long battles. Also, not only does it heal more HP and MP than an X Potion or Turbo Ether, but it also only costs one action to use it, meaning it even saves you one extra BP in the long run. The Half Elixir is basically an even stronger version of the Quarter Elixir, just requiring stronger items to be mixed. With healing lore, the Half Elixir just becomes a full-on elixir, meaning you can basically have an infinite amount of full HP and MP heals at your disposal during combat. Now with Giant's Draft, we get into something a bit more interesting. This compound will double the target's HP and heal them for that amount of HP they just obtained. So if you had 1000 HP and you used the Giant's Draft, you would heal 1000 HP and your max health would rise to 2000. Excellent item to use on fragile allies or tanks who need to take hits constantly. Not to mention that this is basically an on-demand maximize HP from the Spirit Master. And continuing that trend of borrowing abilities from other jobs, the compound Font of Life literally gives the recipient the Time Mage's re-raise. It doesn't even use super rare items or anything. The Salve Maker can apply re-raise to anyone they want without needing to use Time Mage as a sub-job, which can be a lifesaver if you feel like you can't find a good place for that job on your team. Beast Vim and Demon Auras are quite similar to each other, with each of them raising either physical attack or magic attack by 30%. These items allow for the Salve Maker to provide extra buffs to the party, giving them even more utility beyond just healing. And continuing the trend of providing support, the Salve Turtle Split is identical to the Vampire's Curse, lowering a target's physical and magical defense by 25%. Do not be fooled by the item's description, that's a translation error. Regardless, being able to not only buff your team's attack power, but also lower the enemies, on top of everything else this job has, is just insane. And Element Boost just keeps adding on to it, giving the recipient an Elemental Amp, which is once again a Spirit Master ability turned into a consumable. And if you think the Salve Maker can't deal good damage with their salves, well, Shadow Flare has that covered, as it deals 5000 dark damage to your chosen foe, with its damage only getting higher and higher as you use item boosting abilities. Lastly, if you pair certain elemental compound items with an insect antenna, you can literally create any elemental weakness for an enemy. This paired with the element boost item makes the Salve Maker a magical damage dealer's best friend for life. Pairing similar items with a monster fiber will have similar effects to the insect antenna, but will instead create any elemental resistance you want, which is also quite handy. Now, I only listed 13 creations here, and again, there are over 70 of them. I don't want to keep you here forever though, so I'll stop here, but I encourage you to experiment with each item and see what you find. There are tons of possibilities and very powerful items within this kit. Okay, a quick checkup. Are you following this all so far? It's a lot of information to get down in one sitting, so take a break if you need to, come back. But right now, let's go ahead and talk about how we get some of the items to make these crazy concoctions. Now, there are 4 primary ways of obtaining these items, so let's go over them one by one, starting with the most well-known way, Nerende Village. If you upgrade the compound and item shops in Nerende Village, the adventurer will be able to sell you any item you desire as long as you've leveled up the shop high enough. This is without a doubt the easiest way to get these items. However, since the online features of Bravely Default are shut down as of 2023, this method has become significantly more difficult. So then, let's take a look at the other ways we can snag these items. The second method, and frankly the most boring one, is to just play the game. Throughout the game, you'll encounter countless enemies and open a ton of treasure chests. These often bestow these items that you can use to create your concoctions. But unless you're using a guide, you won't know what item will drop from any enemy or chest, making this method somewhat unreliable. Okay, so then playing the game is pretty boring and fairly unreliable, so then how about another more direct method? Well, this one involves stealing from enemies, as they more often than not have compound items that can be stolen from them. Since the Thief job has an easy means of running through an enemy's pockets thanks to Master Thief and Shakedown, you can easily accrue a large supply of items without much issue. The question then becomes, what do you steal from to get the specific item you want? Well, the general rule of thumb is to steal from the enemy type that matches the item you want. An easy example of this is to steal from insect enemies if you want insect antennas. While this isn't always the case, it is a very common one. I will leave a link in the description that leads to a wonderful Google Doc that can give you a list of every single drop and steal item that every enemy in the game has. This was a big help in the research of this video, and it saved me a lot of time. So then, what's the fourth method for getting these items? Well, the Salve Makers themselves have their own personal method of obtaining items. But since I'll be covering it later down the line in this video, I will just leave the explanation of it for that point. Okay, we're finally going to move on from that mess for a bit and talk about something much simpler, like Salve Maker's ability, First Aid. First Aid will activate at the end of a turn and will heal the character with the lowest current HP. This ability is very much a panic button, allowing you to keep your team healthy without too much agency. If you're paranoid that a teammate is going to be low on health by turn's end, use this to patch them up before the next turn comes around. Next, we have Experiment. This ability will have you turning a recovery item into an attack item. The recovery item will be lost in the experimentation, so make sure you choose wisely about what you use. The type and potency of the attack item is entirely based on the type and potency of the restorative you experimented. Items like X potions and turbo ethers will net better results than a regular potion or ether, for example. While this is awesome for utilizing attack items frequently to allow the Salve Maker to be more aggressive, this can also be a very easy money scheme, as most attack items will sell for more PEG than regular restoratives. So buy restoratives, experiment on them, turn them into attack items, and sell them for profit. It doesn't work super well later down the road, as there are easier ways to make money, but it is a method that you can utilize. Up next is Inoculate. This ability will allow the user to consume an ailment-curing item, like an antidote, echo herb, or even a phoenix down, and use it on a party member. This will make the recipient immune to the effects of whatever ailment you just used for 6 turns. For example, inoculating a balsam on a party member will make them immune to dread. This allows you to plan ahead against fights with annoying debuffs like silence or even instant death, though it also means you might need to study up on certain encounters before you try using it, as it does consume the item you used. Now we've come to Widen Area. This ability is quite simple. Use 1 extra BP to spread the effects of a single item to all targets. As an example, you can use an X potion on all allies and heal them for quite a bit of health, or throw a gold hourglass at your opponent to stop them all in place. It can even turn a regular elixir into a mega elixir. Possibilities of Widen Area are vast. Or wide, I guess, but... And it can really turn a bad situation into a good one with a well-timed Phoenix Down or X potion. Next is Turn Toxic. Turn Toxic will make any of your standard recovery items, like potions or ethers, into attack items imbued with poison. The amount of HP they healed will be the amount of damage they deal, so chuck stronger potions to deal more damage. Every single one of these items will also have a chance of poisoning their target, as the name implies, so it can be a good way of applying that ailment. Though do note that the power of poison does not change based on the item you use, it is a constant 1% HP reduction. Now, while I wouldn't recommend it fully, you can turn Toxic Mega Elixirs, which will deal max damage to all enemies on the field with no issue. Pairing this with Mimic, which doesn't eat up items, can net you a very, very powerful attack option, giving the Salve Maker the ability to rip apart any combat scenario for a, frankly, great cost. Okay, so now we've come to something a bit more complicated. Collect. When used, the Salve Maker will pull up an item from the ground, which will vary based on where you are currently fighting. The items you can find can be restoratives, attack-based, or even compounding items. Most of the hard-to-find or steal items like Fulminant Shards or Heart Scales can usually be collected this way with a bit of time and patience. But let's return to that whole collection depends on your area thing. There are a few rules to follow when it comes to trying to find what you're looking for. Now, I will say this. I have spent many hours testing collect in every single area in the game. And while I believe I understand what determines the possible items you can obtain, most of this is my own research and not official information. So if you find that there is an inconsistency with it, I apologize. And please let me know. Anyways, let's dive into this, shall we? To start off, every area in the game has a chance of giving you a large set of items, but depending on where you are, the chances of certain items will be increased considerably. There are items that can be found at any location, like potions, ethers, or Phoenix Downs, but any compound or attack items will require a bit more effort to find. The general rule of thumb, though, is to go to an area that matches the type or element of the item you want. To give an example, if you wish to find Fairy Wings, go to the Florum Gardens, as they have enemies that normally drop the item, therefore the collection rate of Fairy Wings will be higher. If you desire Desert Roses, head over to Anchime and dig away. In order to keep this video from being way too long, I'm going to stop there. But if you want a certain item, and you have a feeling you know where to get it, just head over there and collect away. You'll be sure to find it soon enough. This is basically the Salve Maker's alternative to stealing items, as some compounding salves like the Fulminant Shards are difficult, if not impossible, to steal from enemies post-Chapter 4. Figure out what works best for you when trying to obtain items and go from there. Last up on the Salve Maker's combat abilities is Resurrect. Thankfully, this ability is very easy to understand. This ability will raise all party members who are KO'd with 25% of their HP, or 50% with Healing Lore. For absolutely no cost, you get a group cast raise. This is insanely powerful. As if Salve Maker needed any more utility, they get this awesome ability. Use this if you're ever in a pinch and need everyone alive instantly. And do note that Resurrect only works in combat, so don't rely on it if your team needs a patch-up after a brutal battle. Okay, so first up on support abilities is Attack Item Amp. When equipped, all attack items that the user activates will have their potency increased by 50%. This can allow for some of the fairly powerful attack items like a Bomb Arm to deal massive fire damage to all foes without much effort. And since you can use Experiment to obtain potent attack items with ease, this support ability can turn the Salve Maker into an effective damage dealer with items alone. Second up is Auto Potion. If this support ability is equipped and you have access to at least one potion in your inventory, the user will automatically use a potion upon taking any form of direct damage. Now, I know what you're thinking. Will Auto Potion use up any higher tier potions like High or X potions? And the answer is sadly no. The only item that is affected by Auto Potion is regular potions, which really limits the utility of this support ability, as recovering 150 to 300 HP isn't really going to help you that much, even at the point in the game where you obtain a Salve Maker. But hey, this job's gotta be bad at something, right? Next up is Shorten Ailment. This support ability increases the chance of ailments wearing off at the start of each turn by 50%. This is quite useful, as it can rid you of some pesky debuffs like Sleep, Charm, or Stop much quicker than normal. Unfortunately, the biggest weakness of the support ability is that it only increases the chance of the ailment wearing off, instead of just shortening their duration entirely. This means that if you're really unlucky, any ailment that you might have still has a chance of lasting as long as it would normally, even with the support ability equipped. The Salve Maker's specialty, Healing Lore, is an amazing support ability. Because it straight up doubles the effectiveness of healing actions, jobs like the White Mage can easily top off a high-level party with a single Cura, saving them so much MP in the long run. Hell, even jobs that only have a decent mind stat, like the Knight or Red Mage, can take advantage of this, allowing them to fill support roles in your party even better than they originally could. Now we've come to Auto Phoenix. This support ability will raise a KO'd party member after an action has been performed by the character who has this ability equipped. You must have at least one Phoenix down in your inventory for this ability to activate. If death is a worry of yours, and you don't want to constantly waste 1 BP to raise an ally over and over again, this support ability can see some use. Though make sure you don't accidentally eat into your Phoenix down stock too much without buying more, or you might find yourself in a bit of a pickle down the line. And finally, at job level 14, the Salve Maker learns Feel No Pain. This is an interesting support ability, as it will negate all damage the user takes for the first 2 turns of combat, but will then add up the damage they would have taken in that window of time and dump it all on them after the 2 turns have expired. This ability is normally used if you plan on wrapping up a tough encounter in just 2 turns, making it to where you don't need to worry about death ruining your plans. Its uses are quite unique, I'll say, but unless I'm specifically using it for the purpose I just mentioned, I struggle to find another instance where Feel No Pain can really pull its weight. Okay, so let's dive into talking about the Salve Maker as a main job. I think it'd be best to talk about what this job struggles with before we get to its many positives. I'll go ahead and say it now. The support abilities that the job offers outside of Healing Lore range from very situational to pretty much useless. Some of them, like Attack Item Amp or Feel No Pain, can have their time to shine, but then there's Auto Potion, which is really bad. The Salve Maker's main means of dishing out damage is also naturally limited, since it relies mostly on consumables. Because of this, it can be a bit awkward to try and battle with this job, though it isn't by any means impossible. In fact, the limited aspect can actually work in the job's favor in some occasions, like using a Mega Elixir with Turn Toxic. The Salve Maker doesn't have the greatest stat spread either, sporting middle-of-the-road HP and agility, making them fairly fragile without any buffs added on. But of course, the biggest problem with this job, whether it is a main or sub-job, is that you have to collect your own items to use any of them, and without Nerende Village, that can become quite the chore. However, if you can get past the extra effort that it takes to make this job good, you gain access to a beast of a job. The Salve Maker's potential is really only limited by your own creativity, as it can literally fill any role you see fit. I mean, not to dawdle on it too much, but I went on and on about how much utility the Red Mage has, but the Salve Maker has it beat by a mile. The Salve Maker can provide support with increased healing potions and ethers, stat-boosting Vims and auras, while also being able to create weaknesses for any enemy in the game, allowing magical damage dealers to be viable in any encounter. The biggest pro of the Salve Maker as a main job, though, is their specialty Healing Lore, as it will naturally boost their healing output. This not only applies to their salves, but it also applies to white magic. giving the Salve an ample means of playing a healer with nigh infinite utility. Of course, using the Salve as a sub-job removes that innate bonus, meaning you'd have to use 2 support slots to have the same effect on any other job. But that's still a pretty good bargain. Honestly, even as a sub-job, the Salve is an amazing choice, from still having access to compounding, to being able to use skills such as Resurrect and Widen Area to keep your team alive and healthy through any encounter. Honestly, there is a large amount of people who truly believe the Salve to be the unrivaled best job in Bravely Default, and I can honestly see where they are coming from. This job pretty much has everything it could ever want, with its only real shortcomings just being minor inconveniences at most. While I wouldn't say this is the best job in the game, as I personally don't think there really is a right answer to that question, if there was a job I'd put my money on, the Salve would definitely be high up on my list. Okay, lastly, we've come to the fashion tier list. As always, starting with the boys, we're treated to a fairly simple design. They don a lab vest with a belt of vials holding some chemicals. This is a look that I'm actually quite fond of, as it's simple and showcases the idea of a Salve fairly well to me at a glance, being one who messes with chemicals in creative ways. They're even wearing special gloves, safety first of course. I will say though that I'm not a fan of the striped pants or shoes though. They look a little too unprofessional, I guess is the best way of putting it. Mix of good and bad, which will land the men squarely in B tier. The ladies aren't far off the mark either, taking a slightly different approach to the Salve design. While they lack the flask belt, which definitely hurts the outfit in my opinion, they do sport a hat that is similar to that of a nurse. They look the part of healers more than the boys do, which, giving the specialty of the job, fits them quite well. Solid design, but nothing crazy, so I think B tier is also a good spot for them as well.